today we will finalize really the foundational work for sustainable leadership. We've been talking about really trying to understand what is emotion and how emotions have very similar construct or concept, but that are different. And we talked about how emotion are slightly different from feelings and how also emotion are slightly different from mood, and even how emotion might be different from passion. But all of that was just to get to the point to be able to use emotional intelligence. And study has revealed that what really makes a leader being effective before even trying to be able to sustain and endure your leadership is truly not your technical skills, but primarily, your emotional intelligence. And that emotional intelligence is key for leaders, managers to be effective. And then we talked about also the importance of cultural intelligence. And I believe I did mention that even if you are operating in the Western world, within your organization, I used to work for General Motors headquarters, and there were people from all walks of life. In just our division, the global market and industry analysis, we have the economist for Asia, he's from China. The market analyst for Asia was from Japan. The economist for, we have what we call LAM, Latin America, Africa, and Middle East. He was from, I believe, Mexico. And I was the market analyst for Africa and Middle East. I was from Africa. We have also other people from Europe. Within General Motors, you can talk about maybe 100, maybe more languages being spoken, different cultures, people from different backgrounds. And as a leader, not being aware of those subtle nuances, what we talk about cultural faux pas, and not understanding the lasting impact that those might have on the morale, on the motivation, on the commitment, engagement of your collaborator can be very dangerous. That's why cultural intelligence is more about how do you deal with others? How do you manage seemingly across culture? And understanding those are critical. That's why we briefly visited cultural intelligence from just the cognitive aspect of it, understanding and learning from other, but as a culture. And from the intentional part of it, really, trying to put yourself out there because of curiosity, you just want to learn. If it's different, you don't reject it, but say, wow, this is interesting. Try to explore to learn more about other culture. This has to be very, intentional. We also, talked about just being aware, that self-awareness part, of cultural intelligence. And all of that will allow you to adapt and adjust your behavior to make sure that you do not offend other people. But then, you can find the right balance to be able to communicate effectively in order to motivate. At the end of the day, as a leader, what you're trying to do is to influence people to voluntarily want to contribute toward the achievement of whatever your visions, your goals, your objectives that can be defined as a common purpose, but it has to be also for the greater good. Therefore, being aware how you interact with other people is key. And then we briefly touch into emotional intentionality. This is actually go beyond just being aware of your emotion, being able to monitor to regulate your emotion, to make sure that you do not negatively impact others. But this is about anticipating on your own emotion and on other people's emotion to set the stage, create the circumstances, the context in which people feel respected, people feel valued, therefore committed and engaged and willing to participate. This is actually very strategic. You are anticipating and you are creating an environment that is conducive. And remember, that's what the neuroscience of leadership was teaching us. How do we make sure that we do not operate from our brain stem, the reptilian part of our brain, which was considered like the first layer with the animal, where we even don't think about things. Before we lead to the emotional part of our brain, the amygdala, which is the impulsive one where we react. But most importantly, how do we pivot to make sure that we always operate from our precortex part of our brain, which is the cognitive one that can look through our emotion, look through other people's emotion and set the stage. And this is why it is critical for all of us that want to lead to always make sure that we are operating in our full brain capacity, not to just be reactive. As I said in my book, leaders shape people's life. Leaders affect people's life. Leaders' decision can be life and death. Not only they affect our life, but they also affect our livelihood, not just for today, but for generation to come. And I think that we concluded on those. And today we will talk about, this is an easy topic today, those key core pillars of leadership, just in general, will which are we'll touch on vision, and I will not teach you anything about vision. All of you understand what a vision is, can define it, have your own vision. We will talk about building trust. How do you build trust? How do you maintain it? And how do you grow it over time? And how do you make sure that you do not destroy it? Because as I said, trust, you build it to like a drop in a bucket. Doesn't mean it takes time, but when you destroy it, you destroy the entire bucket. And that can take years to build, but only seconds to destroy. And without trust, nothing can be built. Mostly we talk about sustainability. Then ultimately we'll talk about motivation. How do you motivate? And I believe we'll have enough time to also talk about the classical theory of leadership today. I will talk about the personality trait approach to leadership, which is more about the characteristic of the leader, who is the leader. We'll also be able to touch on the behavioral approach to leadership, which is mainly how does the leader behave? And then we'll end today's class on the contingency theories of leadership, but we'll emphasize on Fielder's contingency theory, which is very useful. It can be a very practical tool and framework for you to use as a leader. You also, we'll talk about the managerial grid model, which is another useful tool. And we'll see, maybe we can try, time allows, to look at some very practical model and case that we can exchange. Any question before we start the class today? Any question or comment? Feel free. As I stated, we have a very small class. feel free to speak. I do not mind being interrupted as long that it is related to the topic, as long that your classmates are not speaking. I don't mind. If you have any question, you can either raise your hand or you can just open your mic. Any question, comments so far? I can safely assume that we don't have any. Okay.
Yeah. So far, so good, Doc.
Go ahead.
No, I said on my side, no questions, no comments. So far, so good.
All right. Now, today we will really, all the classes that we'll have will be very, very easy for all of you. Maybe some of the foundational construct are for those that have never encountered like the neuroscience of leadership. And I'm hoping that you started to understand why I have included the fundamental. Because once we go through the theory, you'll see that it's not that complicated. But in terms of you as a leader, trying to apply those concepts, to apply those steps, roadmaps, those blueprints, you will also need to be able to look at yourself, introspective, but also to look at also your relationship with others. And that will take you to a concept we do know reflection is when we think about a topic, but the reflexivity is when we think about the way we are thinking. That's the challenging part. It goes beyond introspective. It goes beyond retrospective. It is about thinking about the way that we are thinking on a real time, looking at our biases before even we start just assuming that we have blind spot. There are things that we don't know, and that we have to try to anticipate on those biases and to address them. But this really being able not just to think about something, but to think about the way that you are thinking. That will be a very helpful tool as a leader and as a manager. I'm not going to ask you, but let's just go through the slide. And remember, I said I'm not a big fan of slide. I don't like to distribute this slide because you can make better slide. AI can make better slide. What really matters is understanding the logic and the rationale behind what we are doing. And here, let's just try to define leadership. And I will just use the easy way out, is that some other great leader, what I have said about leadership, we did set by great leaders what they do most, create experience of hope, compassion, and mindfulness. Right there, you can see the importance of emotional intelligence, the importance of cultural intelligence, and the importance of emotional intentionality and the neuroscience of leadership. This mindfulness is so critical. This as a leader, why would people want to follow you? Create this experience of hope, but also for caring, but deeply caring, and just wanted to serve. What they do, they inspire to hope and vision. Right there, you see the importance of vision. They spread compassion through how? Empathy, being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, being able not to sympathize with them, but having the ability to experience the same pain, feeling, whatever it is, with them, which is going to lead you to inevitably to care. Leaders should care, and mostly care first for their collaborator and their follower. They are mindful. They are always self-aware. As they say, being attuned to mind, body, heart, and spirit. And this is something that, as a scholar and as a practitioner, I do not shy away from that. And I truly believe that we are first and foremost spiritual being. And in the name of science, trying to deny that part of us, for me, is a grave mistake. We should embrace who we are. It does not conflict with science. I believe that your spirituality can open doors that you cannot even imagine, door that science has not opened yet. Therefore, integrating that part of what you do is just going to make you whole. Now, if you don't believe in those things, whatever you believe, it is the same thing. Use that as a way to motivate you, to inspire you, to build resilience. Because as a leader and a manager, you will be challenged. You will face hardship. You will face great difficulties. And most importantly, you will be alone in that journey. Therefore, having something to lean on or someone to lean on, it is critical. What do? Those great leaders? They inspired others by creating and maintaining resonant relationship. And one of your classmates have defined it totally, this kind of relationship where people feel joy, they feel hope, they just excited, they are inspired. They just want to be part because they do know that this is something, this is a journey, and the journey is greater. This is something I cannot do for myself, but with the rest of the group, I can go to height that I can even imagine. I can achieve things just beyond me, but can make a difference in not my life, but in other people's life or in the universe as a whole. And I mentioned that last time, this quote from Maya Angelou would say, and we closed that last time. And next time that I'm sharing and I'm commenting, if for a while you don't see the slide changing, know that I mistakenly did not, because sometimes I switch document or slide or file, but it's not changing. You have to let me know. But what did she say? It is by observation that in the future they will not remember what you said. They will not even remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And this is Maya Angelou that say that. And this is critical. This is critical. Give me just 1 second. I'll let me. Okay. Yeah, I have a very important incoming call. It was the boss of the house, my wife, that was calling. That's why I don't turn off my phone. But again, remember, this leadership is how you make people feel, the decision you make. And this is why people will decide to follow you. And that is also how they build trust. If you go to neuroscience of leadership, this is what we do can create situations where people will want to fight or flee, and you just lose them forever. Therefore, as a leader, we must be very cognizant about how we deal with people. What is leadership? I can let you define it, but let's use what Dwight Eisenhower said. There is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because she or he wants to do it. You see that voluntarily aspect of people making the decision to do it because they want to do it, but it also concerns of what you want them to do as a leader. But you remember John Maxwell said something critical. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's with the people that are following you, first they want to make sure that you care for them. You do care for their well-being, for their livelihood, before they start even allowing you to get to them, to influence them. Again, how you make people feel is critical. I try to give, just to add to that definition, but I expanded with adding two things. It's not only the ability to influence other people, but to voluntarily want to contribute, but with excitement, with enthusiasm, to achieve not just your goal, not just your vision, but it has to be a common purpose. But all of that must be for the greater good. And the reason I added common purpose, because let's just use a bold example. If you are, the chief of all the chief, if you were, let's say, the head of all the robbers, or brigand, I think I just accidentally touched it. Let me go back to my side. Okay. Can you still see am I still sharing?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just make sure that now let's say if somebody is, the head of the biggest gangster band in the city, they respect him, he influenced them, inspired them to do bad things. They might have common purpose, which is to rob people, to do bad things to people. But is it for the greater good? No. If people like Hitler, or any other tyrant that you can think of, they might have, and many times they are very charismatic. That's why I kind of stay away from charismatic leadership, because those evil people can be very charismatic, can be great influencer. But if it's not for common purpose, it might be for their own agenda. But if it's for common purpose, but let's make sure that whatever the common purpose is, it is for the greater good. This is, my definition. But what I want you to remember when it's come to defining leadership, that it is a process. Doesn't matter how you look at leadership, it is a process. And because it is a process, it is something that we can understand. It is something that we can master. It is something that we can learn about, something that we can influence. Because what do you have? If it's a process, who do you need to have? You always need to have a leader. And you need to have a follower. I've seen part where they said, if you have nobody to lead, just lead yourself. I'm saying that you just taking a nice walk. But when you're leading, you need to lead, you need to have follow. You have to have the follow. But it's not happening in a vacuum. It must be a context, a situation, circumstance in which leadership is taking place. Those three elements set the stage for leadership. But what is happening? Does the leader influence the follower? Of course. We always look at leadership from this pyramid, top-down approach. The leaders, directing, commanding, telling people. But we know that the latest approach to leadership has demonstrated the limit of such an approach. The leader at the top, and you have the follower. But it's happening in the context. That's why if you even look at the classical theory of leadership, it follows this pattern where most of the original theory focused on the leader, the great characteristic, outstanding characteristic, extraordinary characteristic of the leader, to try to make us believe that you need to be very unique. It is a small club that belongs to few of us, and for a long time. And you will realize this is what gave birth to the great man theory, that nonsense, theory that look at that they have to be big, tall, intelligent, strong. But we know that it wasn't the case. Then to move to the behavioral theory, because they realized that a leader is interacting with follower. Therefore, rather than looking at just the cultures of the leader, let's look at how the leader behaves, how the leader interacts with he or she is collaborator. Then they said, okay, if they're interacting, they're not doing it, in isolation, in a vacuum. It must be a context. But there's something that also we discuss, we discover that if the leader influences the follower influences the leader, the context influence, because remember, we're showing that it all influences the process. Therefore, through the process, they are interacting. There's something that we discovered that is critical, the outcome. Because people are committing, if people are working hard and they don't see any result, and then they spend a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and don't see an outcome that is worthwhile, you won't be able to keep motivating it. That's why the outcome will influence the process, the process also. But the process, how you interact with your follower, take into consideration the context. That will also affect the outcome. And the more the outcome is positive, the commitment increase, the engagement increase, and performance increases. Therefore, you can see, but if the outcome is being negative, then people are being demoralized, people are being demotivated, people start to get disengaged, then performance decrease. That's why Dunham and Pierce leadership process model is a very powerful one. And that's what I would like you to remember when it comes to leadership. It is a process. That's we already talked. We don't need to. The one thing that I always want to make sure that we address is the relationship between leadership and management. And we briefly talked about that at the beginning when we exchanged. And we did mention at the time that in the word leadership, the main word is lead, and lead is a sense of movement. You're going somewhere. But in the word management, the main core of the word is to maintain. Therefore, we can talk about leadership. You are leading, you are going somewhere. There's an ambition, there's a direction, there's a movement, and you leading people. But when it comes to management, there's some sense of stability. You're maintaining. Therefore, it's about processes. It's about procedure. It's about systems. That's the main difference here. And management, now, we did mention what Peter Drucker said, that doing things right, leadership is doing the right things. That did create a lot of confusion, that people assume that what Peter Drucker meant, that it's just in management, it's just about when you do the things right, that's management, but you're not doing the right thing. Oh, leadership is doing the right thing, but you're not necessarily doing the things right. No, he never said that. What he's trying to get into is that management is primarily about doing things right. It's about system. It's about those engineers in this class, to have systems that you monitor. They rigorously follow the various steps. But leadership is doing the right thing. Now, one example that you might know is when we talked about ethical dilemmas, where the system said you can do this, but is it right? Is the right thing to do? A leader always include that aspect in it. But it doesn't mean that leaders don't do things right. It also doesn't mean that managers don't do the right thing. As I said earlier, the word leadership is lead. You mean to try, you go, movement. This is by James Cruz and Barry Posner. And the same way the root to management is main. It's about to maintain. We'll go, I'm not going to dwell on that, but you have this chart that kind of tells you basically how they differ. Management produces order and consistency, but leadership is messy. It's pretty change and movement. You plan and budgeting. You establish agenda, set timetable, allocate resources. But here you get the vision. You talk about the big picture. Then you try to set strategy, which is making choices, decision. Here you organize, and there's a staffing because you know what to do first, provide structure, you establish rules and procedure. Here it's more about how do you communicate, how do you seek commitment, how do you build team and coalition. On the other hand, management, yes, this whole notion of controlling and problem solving. You have this incentive that is set up. And that will find part of it in the transactional leadership, creative solution, take corrective action. You'll see exactly, when we do the transactional leadership. But here, in the leadership side, it's about motivating, it's about inspiring. And you see that in the transformation leadership. And you can look at those two leadership models where you can say, wow, transactional leadership is very close to just management. Therefore, it doesn't go this far. But the transformation leadership, which is the 4I that we talked about, idealized influence, inspiration, motivation, individualized consideration, and intellectual stimulation, you can say, wow, that is motivating, that is inspiring. Now, if you have any question, do not hesitate to stop me. So far, so good?
Sorry, Doc, can we go back to the last slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just going through these and I'm trying to establish if there is any essential difference there between management and leadership. Because some of the things that I'm looking at, it looks like if it's not just terminology, then it boils down to how do you describe these. For example, if we look at, let's start with, we could just look at organizing and staffing under management, which has got those sub tasks, providing structure, making job placements, and establishing rules and procedures. And then we cross over and we look at aligning people, communicate goals, seek commitment, and build teams and coalitions. I think maybe depending on how this is done, but there is a very thin line of distinction that you may find yourself shuttling between being a manager and also being a leader at the same time. Yeah, so that's my reflection on it. Yeah.
That's actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because usually when I do my leadership training, my class, I start by telling them, okay, who consider themselves as manager? And a group of people raise their hand. I say, who consider themselves as leader? A group of people raise their hand. And I say, who consider themselves as manager and leader? Few people raise their hand. But as you've noticed, it's a very subtle and fine line. Can you be an effective manager without being a leader? Can you be an effective leader without being a manager? You see, you're absolutely right. If you provide structure, in order for people to buy into that structure, or you establish rules and procedure, in order for people to buy and obey and to apply it, you need to find a way to communicate it to them. You need to find a way to seek their commitment. You see, there's the other soft part of it that you need to do as a manager. You don't just come there, hey, this is the rule. But why do we need to do this? Don't ask me why. This has been established. Now you can see how demoralizing, how demotivating. Therefore, yes, in the end, you're going to find that if you are a manager and you have a system that works very well, that they say, you don't change a winning team. If you're winning, why do you want to change it? You have a winning recipe. Why do you want to change it? Now, you were winning because of a context. There are circumstances. There are situations. But what happens if the context change? What happens if the circumstances doesn't change? What do you do? That's when you start wait a minute. We need to adapt and adjust our procedure. Oh, now you are changing. And we said leadership produces change and movement. You are now moving into the arena of leadership. What I want you to take away from this, and I'm glad that you saw it, is leadership, management and leadership are just you are trying to walk. Rather than trying to hump with one foot, said, I'm not only going to walk with my right foot, and you try to hump with your right foot. You see how difficult it is. Or you say, I'm just going to walk with my left foot. You see how difficult. But just assume that you say, you know what? I have my left foot, one step, another step. You are moving with two steps. That's how I see management and leadership. They are interrelated, they are interconnected. And that goes back to all our Ubuntu principle. Everything is interconnected in the universe. If you know that, and that's why it's always safe to have a holistic approach to whatever you do. It helps you solve problem. Thank you for your question. Any other question? Okay. Now, what time is it? Because today we really want to finish, because I did get this question by one of your classmates about the assignment. They mentioned that today assignment was about vision, trust, and motivation, but we have not done it. And I responded, I said, you don't have to teach you anything about vision or trust or motivation. You know about that. You've been doing it. You should be able to do the assignment. But in order to make it easy for all of you, we just go through the entire session for today, where you'll be able to comfortably do your assignment. The vision, as I said all the time, it gives an indication of the future of the organization or the community or even your own future. It gives an image of its destination. It's just about your ambition. You can use as a synonym, vision, you can just put ambition. What are you trying to do? Where are you going? Where are you heading? But there always must be a reason why you're heading there. And I like the quote from Seneca. He said, there are no good road for those who do not know their path. If you don't know where you're heading, how are you going to get there? That's why the vision is critical. But you are going to also make sure that the vision that you're setting, the ambition, it's something that is achievable, that is accessible. Because if you don't, that might backfire. If people work so hard and they don't see the outcome. Remember when you talk about the process, how the outcome is influenced the process by people. That's why it's always good as a leader to make sure you do have quick wins that people can enjoy in order for people to celebrate. It's again, give them hope and sustain them. But if it's so difficult, so hard, people might be discouraged. As we just said it, you have a starting point, is where you are, and you have a destination, where do we want to go? And you have the action that you have to take, the strategy, how to get there. But you see, when I said, where can we go? Do not choose an ambition that is very difficult to achieve. Building trust. Again, as I said, I will go quickly through this. You can dwell on it. You can look for other sources, but let's just go through quickly this concept, because all of us are very familiar. How do you build trust? What do you define trust? It's a personal expectation of others, and how that they will not try to harm you or to act opportunistically. You don't trust somebody that hurt you in the past. And whenever you trust someone, you just make an assumption. They have my best interest at heart. Above all, is a notion of intimacy. But by doing that, you are taking risks. You are taking chances. Remember, there's always time to pray. Now, is it too loud? If it's too loud, I can turn off my mic. Can the background noise disturb you?
No, not yet.
Okay. Now, again, trust involves the notion of intimacy and risk. It takes shape, develops, and strengthens over time. The key is understanding that trust is something that you work on it. As I say, it is a drop in a bucket. And that over time, it takes form, it takes shape, and it develops and strengthens over time. But the same way, keep in mind, if you're building trust drop by drop, action by action, keep in mind that one single action might be able to destroy the entire bucket. You build it drop by drop, but you destroy the bucket at once. Therefore, it's always very critical as a leader to make sure we know how we interact with people. And here you see the importance of emotional intelligence, the importance of cultural intelligence, the importance of emotional intentionality, but most of all, the importance of the neuroscience of leadership, understanding, how you think and how you react to make sure that you always are very aware and that you're operating from your precortex, which is the cognitive part of your brain, rather than operating from your brainstem, which is, I don't like the term animal, but it is the lowest part of our brain. And also, the emotional aspect of it, the limbic part of our brain. That's important that we always understand when we make decision, when we act or when we react, that we are in charge, that we know and what sphere are we operating. Now if you look at, there's a book, The Fundament of Management, Robbins, Carter, Dees, and so I liked it a lot because they have taken the time to really explain this concept. When I teach the MBA programs, I usually use that because it's very easy. And they did a good job. There are 5 dimensions, and you can see how interrelated they are. Integrity. Yes. Yeah, you cannot trust somebody that doesn't tell the truth, somebody that does not respect their commitment, competence. If you are led, I'm assuming that you gave me the benefit of the doubt, that I'm teaching the class that perhaps I know what I'm talking about, perhaps I've written 2 books, maybe that helped, but perhaps, they said I'm a doctor, but, it's up to you to decide, if our lecturer is competent or not. Does he master his subject? If not, I lose trust. You're not going to come to the class. There are some that, I think that you guys have here since the beginning. I know that this is the first time I had a very small group, and you keep coming. I'm assuming, assuming that you believe that I know what I'm talking about. But even if I don't know, you probably will give me the benefit of the doubt because I'm passionate about it. I believe that I enjoy, exchanging and teaching about leadership. Consistency. What people gruesomeness. I do what I say what I do. When you are consistent, why is it important to build trust? Because you are predictable. People do not like uncertainty. If you don't know, the decision keep changing, your language changing, your commitment, people can't trust you. Because remember, we talked about this sense of taking chances. You're taking risk. And because that risk associated of giving your trust to someone, once people betray you, or people lie to you, or people are being inconsistent, then you withdraw your trust. Loyalty. It's important. If you're loyal to somebody, you demand, you expect loyalty. If now loyalty doesn't mean that you are in the wrong and I don't call you up. No, I think that if you are loyal to somebody and they are making the bad decision, you should be able to let them know. You should be able to inform them because if you care, you should. And if you also understand that this might affect you. Blind loyalty, I don't believe in that. Openness. Remember the importance of cultural intelligence. Openness. If you are culturally intelligent, you are open. If something is different, rather rejected it, rather than being intimidated by the unknown, you have a different attitude. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, I want to know. This is different. It's a curiosity that you want to discover and uncover, rather than really remember to flee or to fight or to say to embrace it. Yes, I want to know more. Wow, I didn't know that they guys do this, like for food, For closing, I remember every time that I walk around in the US with my African clothes, I have people that come to me. Yeah. Oh, I love your outfit. And you can see that it's very sincere. I'm sure there are some people that look at me that say, well, this guy is weird. I remember when I was with General Motors headquarters, we were in a meeting and I was doing it purposely. When we have major meeting, I will come with my African clothes. And there was this young guy, he's a Caucasian analyst. And when I came, he saw me, he was shocked. First, he was kind of like, why am I doing that? The VP was there. They were very important people. But for me, this is my African clothes. I would wear it. It's a nice clothes. And I came, they were sitting. He looked at me in front of everybody. So, whoa, Abdullah, you putting a robe? And in the room, everybody was kind of shocked because they were all the people. I look at him, smile. I said, this is, and I use the Senegalese term, grand boubou. It's like a big boubou. It's a traditional outfit that we wear for important event. And by the way, it is much, much more expensive than your cheap suit that you're wearing right now. Everybody laughed. Even there was the vice president, everybody, because I said it's actually more expensive, twice the much than your cheap suit that you're wearing. And I went and sit down. Now, I did not get, I could have lost it. But again, I can tell that he's not culturally intelligent, by trying to criticize my African dress. And I will give another example. By one of my boss, in one of our Zoom meetings, there was a gentleman. Actually, he's from Ghana, but his wife is African American, and he's been living in the US for over 40 years. And he came, there was a celebration in Ghana. He came with the royal clothes. If you guys are familiar with that, it's just go across your body. And the remaining of your body, is shown, but it just go across, and the head. Now, my boss, the founder of the organization, he said, who's this half-naked guy in our Zoom call? I almost said something, but he's an older guy. I just saw that he didn't understand what the guy was wearing. But the gentleman and his wife were there. He just laughed and said, oh, we're just celebrating. He demonstrated high cultural intelligence, knowing that the guy that's offended him doesn't know that this is very royal. It was a royal dress, but you call him half naked. You see, again, if that guy was not culturally adept, intelligent, he might have left the organization. And he's someone that brings a lot with his wife. And his wife is African American. He's, as I said, from Ghana, but he's been living in the US for over 40 years. Again, we have to be very careful as leaders. Openness, something that we don't know. Let's embrace it. Let's try to know more about it. How do you build it? Transparent. Mistrust results as much from people don't know as from what they know. Openness creates trust. Act fairly. Yes. Before deciding, think about how it will be received in terms of objectivity and fairness. You cannot treat people differently. Today, I have nothing against, the current administration, but if you talk about today, people that are following the discussion, the negotiation between Iran and the United States, there's a lot of mistrust. Because in one part side, they're asking this question, are they being fair towards us? When we see how they're behaving with other countries, that's notion of fair, fairness, fact, really trust, especially your true feeling, because you need to be vulnerable. But if you are showing that you are this perfect, that you are perfect, you have no flaws, then people will trust you. You have to reveal your humanity. And again, this shows that how this whole Ubuntu philosophy is so powerful when it's come to any dealing with human being and building trust. Yes, you may have to be truthful, coherent, and keep your promises. Those are now there are three types of trust that we talk about. The deterrence-based trust, and one example is that when the university assigned me to your class to be the lecturer, you might not know who I am. You probably just read my background, but you don't have a choice here. You have to come to the class because you said if I don't come, I might not get my grade. It's a deterrence because I am holding some kind of power over you because of my title. I have a legitimate power over you because I've been appointed to be the one that doing the class. You have to touch me by deterrence. You don't have deterrence only works, but here it's based on the fear of retaliation in the event, but which lead to very fragile and strained relationship. You cannot build deep trust with that. It's only work when the punishment is conceivable and the repression clear and the sanction apply in the event of a misconduct. If you say that if you don't do this, I'm gonna inherit it. I'm not gonna go there. But what I'm saying is that if you threaten somebody about doing something to them, if they don't abide to certain things, and they don't, and you don't do anything about it, and you weaken yourself. Let me leave it at that. There's another kind of trust called experience-based trust. It's again based on your dealing with people. You know who they are. The trust level is based, in other words, on the behavioral predictability that results from a long period of interaction. Now, there is a deeper level of trust, identity-based trust. This goes further. It's based on an affective, emotional connection between the two parties. This is the highest level of trust. When this at the emotional level, where there's a bond between mother and child, husband and wife. This makes it possible to act in the interest of others. You know for sure. That means when you give power of attorney to somebody, that just the ultimate. And you trust them with you to make decisions for you and for your family. Or when people say to you, when I'm no longer here, I want to take care of my family. Those are the kind of things that's any question? Before we dwell, as you can see, there's very light. There's nothing difficult about that. Any question? Contribution? Okay. Let's move to motivation. As I mentioned earlier, after talking about, those core elements, ability that you need to have to be an effective leader and to be able to send your leadership in terms of emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, emotional intentionality, and the neuroscience of leadership. Then I said that we got to remember leadership have three core pillars, or I will call it ingredient, like you are making a drink or you're cooking a meal. In order to have something that is good, people will enjoy. Those three ingredients are the vision, trust, and motivation. And you have to be able to decide how much you're putting on it. Now you're doing about motivation, which is one of the core pillars of leadership. How do we define it? I'm going to use Valorant and Phil, who said that it is as a concept aiming to describe the internal or external forces producing the initiation, direction, and persistence of behavior. How do you make sure that your collaborator, can initiate something that you want them to do? They can follow the direction, but they can keep it with intensity and persistence. In other words, motivation is a question of understanding why and how a particular behavior of envy is triggered and sustained. And that's what you're trying to do. You as a leader, a manager, you're trying to influence people. Yeah, you want to trigger, to push them to make a decision. That's why we use emotion a lot. As I said, emotion is this very sudden and very intense things that happen, which can be sustained through feeling that lead to mood. But you want to trigger something. You want to get them to commit. You want to get them to engage, to participate. But not just that, but you want it to be sustained. And that's through motivation that we do that. It is a process in which by person effort are energized, direct, and sustained towards attaining goals. You see, there are three elements here. About the energy that you create. But that energy must be channeled towards something, towards somewhere. But it has to be sustained, to be persistent. That the energy is the element measure the intensity. The quality of the effort must be in a direction that benefits the organization or the community or that person. It includes a persistent dimension. And that's, we will now keep that in mind. The energy, the effort, which is the direction, but also how do you sustain it? We will talk about some of the most popular motivational model. And of course, we start with, before I, can somebody tell me about Maslow, hierarchy of need? Because we have encountered all of that before we go through that. Can somebody explain to us Maslow hierarchy of need? You might not be very familiar with the other, but this one, I know that you are very familiar with. Yes, Abel?
Okay, I will say a bit of what I can still recall. It's sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you can speak louder. Yes.
Okay, so Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think he developed that theory in the 1940s, and it describes human needs in the form of a hierarchy, often showed by a pyramid, and there are 5 levels basically. The physiological needs, which are the basic needs like food, water, air, shelter, you name it, and then followed by safety needs, personal security, social security, financial stability, health. And then the third is love and belonging, developing a sense of belonging. So we're talking about the qualities of family, friendship, relationships, in fact, the whole web of social connection, the social web. And then fourth is esteem needs. Now, this is at a personal level, like at the level of your self-worth, your level of confidence, and your status in society, and your achievements. And then the last one is the top level, the self-actualization, which is the highest level when you reach your full potential. So I think the theory states that you unless the needs of one level are met, it's very difficult to graduate to the next level. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Absolutely. No, you got it right. But I think that the only thing I will add, they just say that not unless, they said that unless you address the lower need, you cannot go to a higher need. For instance, there's no point to use safety need of security and safety if you have not added the physical needs. It will not motivate somebody for you as a leader to try to address their safety need if they don't have any food, water, or what, because they know that I'm going to die anyway. Why would I care about safety? That's the whole idea. And also, you don't need to try to motivate somebody by address their belonging need and love before you even address the physiological or safety need. That's the whole approach for Maslow. And likewise, before you can address the esteem need, prestige, and feeling of accomplishment, you need to address these three before you get there. And ultimately, the self-actualization to achieving one's full potential. You cannot just start there. Now, this is what Maslow is saying, that you need to address the lower level of needs. Now, let me ask you, do you agree 100% with this? Do you agree that for some people, before for them belonging and love need to wait until their physiological need and safety need are addressed? Is it necessarily true?
I think for me, it's okay. I think someone is speaking, so I'll give them a chance.
Okay, well, go ahead. Who was speaking? You were the only one that unmuted. I'm not sure. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? Elizabeth.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes. Yeah, I'd just like to say that to a large extent, I agree with Abraham Maslow. I cannot say for sure that it's 100% correct or otherwise, but I know that in my culture, in Yoruba land, we normally have this saying that if the problem of food is solved, other things are easier to deal with, right? So to a large extent, I agree that some of these things. Now, an individual who is hungry, probably ill, will not be thinking about self-actualization because they'll first of all be thinking about survival. So after I have survived, then I may be thinking about my self-esteem need, about my how important or how I appear in the public. You know, there are times when you are in a party and people just, locally, and people just come irrespective of how they are dressed, looking for leftovers. If a person is not hungry, you can think about packaging. I put that packaging in quotes, being well-dressed and acting self-sufficient. But when an individual is desperately hungry, you are not mindful of whether somebody would say you are not comporting yourself well, you are not showing proper etiquettes and things like that. People just do things to survive. After they finished eating, for instance, they may now say, they may now reassess how they had behaved and things like that. So to a large extent, I agree with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Abel?
Okay. Yes. To a large extent, like what Elizabeth has just said, I agree. It makes a lot of sense. However, what I don't agree with is in fact two main things. The one being that unless the needs at a lower level are satisfied, you cannot graduate to the next. What I have problems with that is people can pursue multiple needs at the same time. Also, there is an element that defines us as human beings, like you said at the beginning, from a spirituality point of view. And I know that there are some spiritualities that have detachment, non-attachment to material possessions as a virtue. You look at some religious communities or some missionaries who can actually pursue higher needs whilst not being caring about social or safety needs. So that's one level at which I tend to not necessarily criticize, but not to actually to point that it's not exhaustive. And then the second point is from a cross-cultural psychological point of view, especially when we look at the psychological needs, the esteem needs and belongingness and love needs. There are some cultures in which the esteem needs are actually lower because they are personal as compared to belongingness and love needs, which is more like collective. These are communal. So they place the community above the individual. So that's my critique.
Thank you for your comment.
Sir,
And I think that's
sir,
exactly, yes, go ahead, Elizabeth.
okay. I just think I just also just want to add this, that I
Mhm.
know for a while we've been talking about hope and spirituality and all of that, right? So maybe something that Maslow did not also consider is that sometimes even when those basic needs have not been met. Now, not meeting basic needs, there's a difference between I am choosing to deny myself while my pantry is full of food, but I am choosing to not eat because of a religious or a spiritual exercise. That's a different thing entirely. But something I think Maslow did not also consider is the fact that sometimes, even in our impoverished states, when we do not have food to eat or when we lack something, hope may be a driving force that still helps us to keep moving in spite of what we do not have until such a time as we are able to get it. And so the hope, the vision for a better tomorrow, the vision that things cannot continue like this can cause people to sacrifice now to be able to get to that point of being self-actualized, do any menial job to go to school and stuff like that. So that could also mean that that hope gives a sense of self-esteem that makes this individual choose to do menial jobs to be able to acquire education or whatever form of training they would need to get to the future that they desire. Just want to add that.
Absolutely.
Can I say something? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
go
to
ahead.
me, I mean, yes, thank you. Maslow was right to an extent, but I tend to differ at this moment with his hierarchy of needs. Because I do so because people don't adhere to achieving these needs strict to sensu from bottom to top. There are situations now where people pursue love, pursue safety, even when they are hungry. Even in Nigeria, it's happening where people are pursuing safety without thinking about the food they need to eat. So it's no longer from that you must actualize the bottom needs before you move to the next step, where you now actualize your psychological needs before you go to the other one. Sometimes people pursue love, which is on which hierarchy now, on the third level, at the mid, even when they are hungry, without pursuing this. So, and the research has shown that Maslow studied a very small group of people when he was doing this research. And those people were people who were closer to him. But recent time shows that the community where one dwells in, the environment where one finds him or herself, the kind of situation the person, the cultural attachment the people are living with, are now determining how they actualize their needs. It's no longer from bottom to top, according to Maslow. Sometimes they can jump from one level of actualization to the other one. So that's where I tend to differ from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Before I was adhering to it, but with all the new research in town, I no longer, support that into two. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is exactly what I like this class and this session to be all about. That we analyze these tools and not to criticize them, but to look at their limits, their limitation in terms of their applicability in our own environment. You guys have raised three main important things, when Elizabeth, mentioned, about this whole idea of hope. I can change the entire pyramid. This whole that, and the reason, the other way is that willing to sacrifice, not just for a better tomorrow, but for future generation. There are people that will be willing to sacrifice everything, physiological safety, love, just for the future generation, to have a better life, or for the children to have a better life. For them, that's their self-actualization. They are leading, going, skipping all the four bottom, go to self-actualization. I know a community here in Senegal, for those that know, the Bifal. It's a community that for them, their self-actualization is just to have the blessing of the sheikh and to work and to give everything. They will instead to go to the forest to cut down tree, where there's lion, their highness, there are people that get killed. But for them, there's no food there, there's no water. Some people will even die. They're trying to build something in those environments, but they do not care. For them, that's not their priority. Their priority is that they want just to be blessed, to belong to the sheikh. That's all. That's their self-actualization. That's actually translated. That's how they feel their esteemed need. That's how it is being met. Therefore, yes, this is a very useful tool, but you always need to look at this tool through different lenses. It does not invalidate the tool, no. This is a very powerful tool that we need to use to understand how to motivate people. If you have an organization and you said that you want to motivate your team, you don't even give them the minimum wage. And you said, oh, by the way, I'm going to send you to the beautiful cruise for vacation. That doesn't make sense. How they're not going to fall for that. But again, I'm glad that you guys were able to solve this and to understand the limitation and to know how you apply it. And that's how you appropriate these tools. And perhaps, I don't like the term to tropicalize it, but to just see how it applied in in any science. For those that are working on the decision remember, we always started with hypothesis. We talked about limitation and we talked about delimitation. Therefore, there's always a risk when you do research, when you generalize, because your sample is very limited. You have not included, all the different groups in that sample. Well done, guys. There's another motivation theory, McGregor's theory X and theory Y. Can somebody briefly explain to me what this thing is all about? Have you heard about it? Have you heard about this motivational theory or model by McGregor? If not,
I've never heard about it.
Sure, go ahead.
I've never heard about it.
Oh, you never heard about it. Okay. Basically, what McGregor is saying is that you have two categories of managers, primarily, because a leader should never behave that way. He said the one manager believes that people are coming to the company to use the company. They're lazy, they're dishonest, they're opportunistic. And for these people, the only way you treat them, to be on top of it, to be very rigorous, to micromanage, and to punish. They assume that people just don't want to work. That's the theory act. Dislike work, find it boring, we'll avoid it if we can. Must be forced or coercive into compliance. You see the attitude, the direction, need to be directed because they avoid the responsibility. But motivated by fear, lack of money, if you don't do the work, I'm not going to pay you, or lack of job security. That's how you motivate them. They don't care. They don't want to be creative. They don't want to do anything except when getting around the rules. That's the only, you see how negative this manager is. He's assuming the worst of his collaborator. Just imagine. You basically dislike the people that are working for you. On the other hand, you have the manager that abide by theory Y is the exact opposite. We say, oh, people just need to work. They want to take an interest. They believe that they can enjoy the work. They direct outside towards and accept target. If you tell them what to do, they will accept it. Yeah, they will take some responsibility. They are motivated by the desire of self-development, and they want to contribute to the work. They are highly creative when given recognition and opportunity. You see the difference here, the two attitudes, how one is very demotivating, demoralizing, and how the other, is really inspiring and motivating, and being aware to avoid being the theory X manager and try to be the theory Y. That's McGregor's, and you can look at it, and you have enough literature on that. But the basic premise is just this assumption that these people are lazy, they don't want to work, and you have to be on top of them, you have to control them, and then that's why that these people are really want to work. Then you have to create the condition, there and to inspire them. Now, this is another model, Herzberg, the two-factor theory of motivation and hygiene. Those are the two factors, motivation and hygiene. Does anyone else heard about this motivational model or theory? For those that do human resources, this is something that they need to know. They provide. Is there anyone here that have encountered this model? Herzberg two-factor? No?
No, this is my
No.
first time to hear about this. Yeah.
You never heard of it? Because as a manager and a leader, these are things that can be very helpful. Basically, the entire premise of this is that for a long time, there was a major confusion. And pay real attention to what I'm about to say. People assume that job.
The thief was still a bit suspicious. Just as things were getting dangerous, the thief's phone rang. His accomplice told him to go open the door.
Niru,
So he went
your mic
downstairs,
is open.
but
We
soon
can
came back
hear
up together with the other guy.
Can you
I
turn
kept-
off Perkins? Thank you. I said that people assume that if someone is not dissatisfied, they must be satisfied. I repeat, lack of dissatisfaction has been assimilated with satisfaction. Can we discuss that? Can you agree that not being dissatisfied doesn't mean that you are satisfied? Let's discuss that. What do you think? Dr. Michael, I always like to pick on you, Dr. Michael, because you are the doctor. But anyone else
Okay.
want to discuss it?
Maybe, yeah. Let me just give maybe an example of a job, or say someone who is underemployed, right? And so this person is a doctor and is working in a position for, say, a first degree, a graduate position, and this person is getting a pay. Now, assume this person has been out of job for like 10 years and is getting this opportunity to do this job. Now, this individual may not be satisfied with this job, with the job that the person may be dissatisfied with the job, right? Because the person is underemployed, the person is not being paid or is not operating at the level of his or her potential. So this person may not be satisfied, but this person is still okay. I put the okay in quotes. It's still okay because he is earning something. In other words, he's accepting what is right now, while he may still be hoping for something better and may not think twice before leaving where he or she is right now. That's just the way I understand it.
All right. Any other comment? Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other comment?
Yes, I
Yes,
look at
Abel?
it from a logical point of view, because this is binary thinking, you know, and reflecting the fallacy of the law of excluded middles. It's a either or, you know, there's nothing in between there. Whereas there are cases where a person may not necessarily be satisfied with the job, or with the conditions of the job, but that lack of satisfaction is not strong enough to be classified as dissatisfaction. So what I argue with is just it excludes any middle way in between.
Okay. Now let's be clear. What I said is that for a long time, people assume that lack of dissatisfaction is satisfaction. And I think that Elizabeth did a great job by clarifying that someone that in a dire situation might accept a job that will allow him to make a living. At the same time, that job is below their skill set, and they are not dissatisfied with the job because it serves a purpose. But they're not satisfied because they're a doctor and they're doing a master's level job. The point here is that why this was important. This was a very important discovery in human resources, in management and leadership science, because once they realized, because for a long time people said that, why do you complain? You got a good salary. You know, what's your problem? You should be happy. Why do you want to strike? But this was what we call hygiene factor, meaning this is the minimum that is required for people to operate. Because it's a minimum, all it does is that they are not dissatisfied. But that's not motivating. If you're not dissatisfied, that person that is doing a lower level job, they're not going to spend time thinking, creating, innovating. Why? They're just doing it because, you know, that's they to survive. They're not dissatisfied, but they're not motivated. That's what brought these two, the motivation and the hygiene. The hygiene is the basic need that you have to survive, your hygiene, you know, your health hygiene. You need to do this thing to avoid being sick, you know, but doesn't mean that you have a very good, outstanding health by exercising those kind of things. Understand that in a very simple way, that when you are leading people and you set it up and that's as an implication. Incentive was set up based on this lack of understanding. Assuming that lack of dissatisfaction is the same thing as satisfaction. And they said, okay, the hygiene factor, where are they? Working condition. It is a minimum that people need to operate. Getting along with your co-worker, it is a minimum. You know, the policy and the rules. Yes, we need policy and rules. You know, you supervise the quality. You know, you need to have somebody at least that know how to guide you. And you need to have a base salary. These are a minimum. But before, they assume that this minimum should be able to motivate people. No, this model is telling us this is just what keep people coming every day. You know, they will do their job, but they're going to walk away. Now, if you're looking for people that are highly committed, that are engaged, that are motivated, that want to create, you have to do something more. The job satisfaction is achievement. People are here because they want to self-actualization. They want to move up the ladder. Recognition. When they do something, they want to be recognized. want to be in a position to take more responsibility. I always said, do not give responsibility to people, but train them, develop them, and put them in a situation where they say, boss, I think I can do this. They are asking for more responsibility. Work itself, organize it in a way that it is fun, in the way that it is enjoyable. People know that they can advance during this job. Personal growth, not just for the company, but does this allow the person to grow as a human being, even if they have to find a better job, to go somewhere else? Those are the other elements that were missing. And improving the satisfied factor, saying the increased job satisfaction. Improve the hygiene factor, it decreased job dissatisfaction. Because you don't want someone that is dissatisfied in your organization. When you focus on the hygiene factor, all you're doing, you are decreasing the job dissatisfaction. But when you're working on the motivation, satisfying factor, you increasing job satisfaction. And job satisfaction increase commitment, it's increased engagement, and therefore increase productivity and ultimately performance. Does it make sense? I know it's kind of different, but does it make sense for you now? Yes, no?
Yes, it does.
It does?
It does.
All right. I'm glad. The key is to remember that lack of dissatisfaction doesn't mean satisfaction. Now,
Yes.
McClellan theory of needs. And as you can see, this is another spin of the hierarchy of need. It just kind of combine needs for achievement, which is, drive to excel, achieve in relation to a set of standard, to control others, need for power, to get desired things done, and need for affiliation in a good relationship. And you have to see, what kind of need drive this person. If this is a person that needs for, battery is low, I know that as I was saying earlier, let me try to go through this quickly before I run out of battery. Sorry for that. We lost power almost all day. I was using my reserve. Let's hope that by the time that we're in trouble, that we will be. Therefore, the need for achievement, understand what they need and try to motivate through those needs. Need for control, get desired things done. Try to motivate them through the need for affiliation, friendship, good relationship. And we will talk about the Cesar Adam theory of equity. Here, the whole idea is about fairness. It's the effort that people will make, that meaning that the effort I'm making which will allow me to realize my output, and the output will allow me to make some, whatever result. And is the result worthwhile? Is it fair? As you can see, the satisfaction, the input, output, result, benefit, compares made with others, but you want to make sure that if I'm working that many hours and getting paid $10 an hour, and then someone does the same thing to me and getting paid 50, it's not fair. Then it's discouraged. That's the whole idea. Equity, you have to be fair, fairness. Now you have Victor Vroom expectancy theory. Many of you might have heard about it. Why is it important? What it say to you is the expectancy, what to expect, that the effort that I will be performing, the sacrifice I will be making, will allow me to perform because I have the tool and the skill to do the job, that if I work hard, I will have a result. But this result will lead to some outcome. And that outcome will lead to some reward. But the reward will be worthwhile. Now, if you believe that if you work 8 hours in this job, if they ask you to produce 100, I don't know, let me say stick, and you work 8 hours, and you only can produce 80. Therefore, your effort is not being rewarded. But if you work 100 or 8 hours, and you were able to perform the 100 sit, that means you said yes. And that the 800 sit will give you $100. And you said yes, the $100 is really worthwhile. Then your effort, the expectancy that my effort would lead to a performance, the instrumentality, which lead to a reward, which is the balance. And that gives you actually a formula to do that, where people just would look at the effort, but you don't want to make sure, you have to make sure that every time you ask people to do something, that they are equipped to be successful in the job. Now, we'll just quickly talk about the source of power. Because as a leader, most of what you're doing is power. You're influencing with power. Now, we'll go back to, the work for French and Raven. They talked about two types of power, the personal power and the position power. The position power is the power that is based on your position, legitimate power. You are the director, it gives you power. You are the president, it gives you power. That same power gives you a reward power. You have the money to give people, reward people, to pay them. Therefore, when they do what you ask them to do, you can reward them, the reward. Coercive power. If they don't do what you want them to do, you can sanction them negatively. You can penalize them. That power is based on your position. If you don't have that position, you're losing this power. Now you have the other source of power, which is the personal power, that you can take with you anywhere. You're an expert in your domain. Your people will follow you because the person that you are competent and they like to be around you, are knowledgeable. Now, reverend power, because of who you are, who you represent, they want to be like you. You are there.